What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports. I'm back, you guys, with another video. This video here, my Baltimore Ravens state of the season, going into week 8 of the NFL season. Before I begin, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, below NFL videos and college football videos daily. So, state of the season for the Baltimore Ravens. So far, the Baltimore Ravens are 5-2 going into their bye week. And at the time of recording this, they are 5-2. They are in first place of the AFC North with a comfortable lead on the AFC North. They have a 3-game lead on almost every team in the AFC North as the time of recording this. And they're getting ready to face a tough New England Patriots team next week on Sunday Night Football. So the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, this has been a very good team for the most part. And in my offseason prediction, I had the Baltimore Ravens going somewhere between 10-6 and 11-5. And I also had them winning first place in the division between the Cleveland Browns or I pretty much had them or the Cleveland Browns winning the division. And this was coming from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I did not expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the division this year. So I had it between the Browns and the Ravens. And so far, it looks like that's what the division is going to come down to, even though the Baltimore Ravens has a pretty good grasp on the AFC North. So it looks like the Baltimore Ravens pretty much have this division in their hands as of right now. But I mean, they have a very tough schedule coming up in their next 4 games. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But right now, I want to talk about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, come from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I think he's been MVP of the NFL so far. 1,650 passing yards, 11 touchdowns through the air, 5 interceptions. He's completing 63.3% of his passes. And running the football, 576 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 6.9 yards per carry and averaging 82.3 rushing yards per game. Now, I told everybody in the offseason when Greg Roman was announced the new offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens that Lamar Jackson was going to end up being a Pro Bowler. And the reason why is because Greg Roman, this is a guy who was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers the year Colin Kaepernick took them to the Super Bowl. He was also the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills the same year Tyrod Taylor became a Pro Bowler. So this was expected with Greg Roman being the offensive coordinator. Lamar Jackson, he's very efficient every time he runs the ball. He runs the ball a pretty good bit, but it's not at the rate that he was running the football last year. So Lamar Jackson, he's efficient every time he's running the football. He's averaging near 7 yards per carry every time he runs with the ball. He's efficient as a passer. He's completing 63.3% of his passes. And I mean, when we look at the MVP award, the most valuable player, it's the player who contributes the most to the success of their team. In my opinion, it has to be Lamar Jackson. Now, a lot of people are going to say Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. But when we look at Lamar Jackson, what Lamar Jackson has done this season, I mean, not just passing the football, but running the football. Lamar Jackson is averaging 82.3 rushing yards per game, right? And Baltimore is the best team in the NFL when it comes to rushing the football. They're averaging 204.1 rushing yards per game, which is number 1 in the NFL. Now, we take away Lamar Jackson's 82.3 rushing yards per game, subtract that from Baltimore's total rushing yards per game total, they dropped to 13th in the NFL rushing yards per game with 121 rushing yards per game. If we subtract Lamar Jackson's rushing yards per game, so we deduct Lamar Jackson's impact for running the football. The Baltimore Ravens go from the best football team when it comes to running the football to 13th in the NFL. So Lamar Jackson, he is a very big part of this Baltimore Ravens offense. And a lot of people think that just because Lamar Jackson isn't the most flashiest passer in the world and things like that, he's not going to win an MVP award. And I have to say you're wrong if you have that narrative. When we go back to a couple of years ago, back in 2015, when Cam Newton took the Carolina Panthers to the Super Bowl that year, I mean, he was doing basically the same thing Lamar Jackson was doing. We can argue and say that Lamar Jackson was more efficient than Cam Newton the year that Cam Newton won the MVP award back in 2015, because Cam Newton that season didn't even complete 60% of his passes. And Lamar Jackson is on pace to have better throwing numbers than Cam Newton. So you can argue and say that Lamar Jackson was a more efficient passer than Cam Newton when Cam Newton won the MVP award back in 2015. So I think that Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, is MVP of this year's NFL season so far as we enter the midway point, because look what he's doing. Not just run the football, but passing the football as well. And Lamar Jackson, he's winning games. That's what people fail to realize. I mean, he might not have the best passing numbers, but I mean, this dude, I mean, he wins football games. And he is the most valuable player to the Baltimore Ravens. And we can say the same thing about Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, but the imprint that Lamar Jackson has on his Baltimore Ravens offense, I just don't think you can overlook that. I mean, running the football and throwing the football, he's basically this Baltimore Ravens offense. He is the key clog of this Baltimore Ravens offense. And without Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens could easily be one of the worst teams in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball without Lamar Jackson. So I think Lamar Jackson, he's my mid-season MVP as we enter the midway point of the NFL season. Now, looking at the Baltimore Ravens, what they've been doing on the offensive side of the ball, besides from Lamar Jackson, they are second in the NFL and yards per game on the offensive side of the ball. They're averaging 434.9 yards per game on the offensive side of the ball in total offense. They're 18th in the NFL in passing yards per game with 230.7 passing yards per game. They're the best team in the NFL when it comes to rushing the football, 204.1 rushing yards per game. And they're second in the NFL in points per game behind New England with 30.6 points per game in the NFL. So this Baltimore Ravens offense has taken major improvements compared to where they were last season. Last season, they weren't bad on offense, but they weren't great. They were pretty much middle of the pack. And now we see this Baltimore Ravens offense. They're a little bit more balanced. They're still most of the time run heavy, but they're a little bit more balanced. Now, although Lamar Jackson has had some bad passing games, but some great passing games, I mean, Lamar Jackson has taken some big strides this year as a passer. Now, he's still inconsistent as a passer, which is to be expected because he's only in his second year in the NFL. But Lamar Jackson is a big reason why this Baltimore Ravens offense has taken the steps that it has. And I mean, when we look at Lamar Jackson, I mean, Lamar Jackson is a big reason why John Harbaugh is still the head coach of this Baltimore Ravens team. I mean, without Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh could pretty much be unemployed to be the head coach of another football team. The fact that Lamar Jackson has been saving this guy's job last season, this dude Lamar Jackson has had a big imprint on this Baltimore Ravens offense, and I think that's the big reason why he deserves to win MVP, because of how good this offense has been. It's been because of the steps that Lamar Jackson has taken this season as a passer and being more efficient when it comes to running the football. So now we get to the defense side of the ball. Now the Baltimore Ravens on the defense side of the ball have taken a little bit of a step down, mostly due to injuries. They're 13th in the NFL in yards per game allowed 349.7 yards per game. Passing the football, they took a big step down. I mean, these guys are 26th in the NFL in pass yards per game allowed with 265.4 pass yards per game allowed. And I mean, that's a big step compared to where this Baltimore Ravens defense was last season. And the big reason because of that was because they had a big injury in the secondary, had season-ending injuries to Deshaun Elliott and Tony Jefferson. So, I mean, that's a big reason why Baltimore has taken a big step down and when it comes to pass defense. But another reason is because they can't really get a consistent pass rush. And you have to wonder if Baltimore, if they should try to take a stab at trying to get a pass rusher as we near the trading deadline. Maybe you pull the string and try to get a guy like a Vic Beasley or somebody like that. But, I mean, a big reason why is because this secondary, they're not being helped out by the pass rush. Last year, Baltimore was pretty solid when it came to getting pressure on the quarterback. But this year, they've taken a big step down in that department when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback and getting sacks. So that's a big reason why Baltimore has taken a step down when it comes to pass yards per game allowed. Now, we look at rushing yards per game allowed. They're one of the best teams in the NFL in rushing yards per game allowed, allowing opposing teams to rush for 84.3 yards per game, which is third in the NFL. They have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. And points per game allowed, they're 16th in the NFL and allowing opposing teams to have 22.3 points per game. So, the Baltimore Ravens, their next 4 games, they probably have the toughest second half of the season than any team in the NFL. I mean, the second half of their schedule is absolutely brutal. We got to look at this upcoming game they have. They have New England. Now, a benefit of this game is that they don't have to go on the road to face New England because it's very tough to beat New England at New England. So the fact that Baltimore is going to be home in this game is going to swing this game a little bit in their favor. That it'll be a little bit winnable. Now, a lot of people think New England's going to end up winning this game because people don't really trust Lamar Jackson to throw the football effectively in this game. When we look at his performance versus Seattle when he went 9-20, 9-20 is going to be good enough to beat New England. But the fact that Baltimore is going to be at home during this game is going to make them a little bit more likely to win this game than what they would be if they were to go on the road and have to face New England at New England. So they have a better chance winning this game at home than they do going on the road at New England. Then they have to go on the road and face Cincinnati. We're pretty much set in stone that Cincinnati is one of the worst teams in the NFL, so that'll probably be a W their way. Then their next 3 games, I mean, they have to play the Texans. That game is at home. The Texans look like one of the better teams in the AFC. Then you got to play the LA Rams. The LA Rams are kind of trying to get things back on track. They got things back on track with a win versus Atlanta. And, I mean, the LA Rams, I mean, that's going to be another big game. That is going to be playoff implications for both teams in that matchup. And then a game that's not listed is the Buffalo Bills. They got to go on the road and play Buffalo. After you just get done playing the LA Rams, you got to travel all the way to the West Coast in a different time zone. Then you got to fly all the way back and you got to go play the Buffalo Bills in a very tough environment. Buffalo has probably been the biggest surprise, not in my opinion, but to most of the NFL and the media of the NFL season. And I mean, when we look at Buffalo, I mean, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. So that's going to be a very tough game for the Buffalo Ravens to be able to win. This is a game that's not listed on the graphic, but that's another tough game. So the Baltimore Ravens have a very tough schedule, and Baltimore could easily end up losing a lot of these games, and they can easily end up winning a bunch of these games. But I mean, the Baltimore Ravens have a very tough schedule coming up, and this schedule that they have coming up in the second half of the season, we're actually going to see how good this Baltimore Ravens team is and how good Lamar Jackson is going to be in some of these very tough games, because these are basically going to be playoff atmospheres games. These games coming up are going to have a playoff feel to them. So Lamar Jackson, if he's able to win majority of these games, now I think he deserves to win NFL MVP, because this is probably the toughest second half schedule that I've seen out of any team in the NFL so far. So, I mean, this Baltimore Ravens, they have a tough second half of the season, but they're able to win the majority of these games and win out. Then I think Lamar Jackson most definitely deserves to win NFL MVP. And then another thing is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, the big knock on the Baltimore Ravens has been their offense when they are behind. Now, Baltimore is 1-2 when they are trailing at any point in the game, specifically going into the fourth quarter. So when Baltimore goes into the fourth quarter trailing, they're 1-2. So that's a key stat to keep in mind, because this is an offense that is the reason why people say that Baltimore isn't that good for a trailing compared to Kansas City or Green Bay wants to be behind, is because Baltimore is a run-first offense. They're still not there. You don't want to add Lamar Jackson still isn't there when he can bring you back down 2 touchdowns or more by strictly asking Lamar Jackson to throw us back into the football game and win us this game. He's not there yet versus having a guy like an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. You can say, hey, Patrick Mahomes, we need you to throw the football such and such times and win this game for us. Lamar Jackson isn't quite there yet as a passer, which is why people often, most of the time, say that Baltimore is a completely different team from trailing. Now, a lot of teams are great when they're up, but I mean, trailing, when you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson who's still developing as a passer, it's still a little bit hard to win those games when you're trailing versus when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just clearing that up because a lot of Ravens fans don't seem to understand why people say that, but that's what people mean when people don't really trust Baltimore Ravens when it comes to trailing. And that's a big reason why, is because Lamar Jackson still is a little bit up and down as a passer, and right now in this stage of his career, you can't really ask Lamar Jackson to bring the Baltimore Ravens back from down 2 or more scores in the fourth quarter versus having a guy like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers who had the time to do that. So that's what I mean. But overall, the Baltimore Ravens are in a pretty good state at this part of the season with a very tough second half of the schedule coming up. So I'm eager to see what Baltimore does in this very tough schedule that they have coming up. So let me know what you guys think about the Baltimore Ravens so far this season. Also, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and college football videos. And thanks for watching.